All right, we're live. Looks like we got a good group of people in chat already. Welcome. We got Cashew, our super-powered moderator there, and I always start this off thanking our moderator. And moderators, as it may be, they are the ones that keep our podcasts friendly and protected from trolls and spam and all that stuff, so the rest of us can enjoy our visit. Got a good guest tonight. I got a friend of mine named David Perkins from down in southwest Oklahoma, down in the Wichita Mountains area, and he's got his brother Brad with him. Is going to be joining us, and they are of the Comanche Nation, and they're going to share some of their folklore and experiences and stuff, and take some questions from people. And as always, you guys have questions, please put them in caps. I do my best to get to everybody. If I miss anybody, it's not on purpose. I want to get everybody's question. When you put it in caps, I can see it better. So who we got? We got Cashew. We got Gary Spike Sr. How you doing, Gary? We got Eugene Ellison. Let's see, Mid-South Sasquatch. Hey, good to see you. Let's see who else we got. Gene Hudson. Eugene, and my buddy Brian Gillen, the original Brian Gillen. And let's see who else we got. Prepper Camper, welcome back. You've been here on the last few of our shows. Hello, Tammy. Let's see who else here. Patty. And also, there comes Amon Chris. So good to see everybody. So as always, if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate it. And as I always do at the start, if you haven't already, I've written a book about my investigations into the Sasquatch mysteries over the past 25 plus years, available here at my shop or on Amazon if you would like to purchase such. So that being, I think I'll get right to it, and we're going to bring on my friend David Perkins and his brother Brad.
Hello.
There they are. How you guys doing?
We're all right. How are you?
Good. So, is it hot down there in your part of the state?
Fairly. Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So we were talking a little, and for y'all that don't know, I got acquainted with David and his mom. They come here to my community once in a while, and we've got acquainted with each other. And they've been sharing quite a bit about their Comanche folklore, which is very fascinating, about the Bigfoot, which in Comanche you call it the
Mupits or Piamupits.
Mupits or Piamupits. Now, does the word Pia have a name, have a meaning itself?
Basically means big.
Okay,
Yeah.
So big, and then Mupits would. Okay, your audio just went out.
I'm sorry. I said big or great. I've heard the word great.
Okay, and the Mupits itself, what would that translate into?
Kind of like monster owl, sort of.
Monster. I've seen a monster, monster owl, and ogre.
Okay.
Those are three words that have been that I've seen in reading through like the Comanche ethnography and the lexicon, the Comanche lexicon.
Okay, so and you and I have talked about before, like how did the owl correspond with like a Bigfoot? But I visited Medicine Park down there here a few months ago, me and my wife, and there's a gift shop there that actually a young lady that was a Comanche was selling T-shirts that had a picture of Bigfoot on the front, and it said Piamupits and then something else on it. So I guess that's just common knowledge that the Piamupits is a word for the Sasquatch.
Around here, all the Comanche. Yeah.
Okay, your audio kind of went out there for a minute.
I'm sorry. I said yes. Among the Comanches, it is. It's known.
Okay. And yeah, here around Ada, you got a Choctaw and Chickasaw. This is Chickasaw Nation, and you've got as we was talking about, like the mean Sasquatch. And this was a Chickasaw elder telling me this the other day. They have what they call a loofah, which he said that's a bad one, and it would come and steal children and like eat them and things like that. And then as we talked about, my friend Tim Harjo that was on the documentary with me said in Choctaw they would call the more benign form of Bigfoot the Hatak Chito in Choctaw. But he said in Chickasaw they call it Hatak Ishtu, which means the exact same thing, big man. That, and I've heard some other words for it as well, but that's the term Tim would use for it in those things.
There seems to be a common thread among Indians, I guess, about these what we think to be Bigfoot. That they all seem to be not something you want to encounter.
Especially in old Comanche stories.
Old Comanche stories refer to them as cannibals.
Oh, yeah, that brings up a whole nother way to look at it, especially when you think of way like back in the 90s and the 80s, the Bigfoot researchers were basically looking for a giant ape in their view. But in a lot of the native cultures, I've seen that thread about them, like, we were talking about the Champay out of Choctaw, the big cannibal ogre, the Zonaquah up in the Pacific Northwest, the cannibal giant lady that would steal children and eat them. What you were just talking about there, the loofah here. Now, a cannibal is something that eats its own kind.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that common thread there. To call something a cannibal, different people and stuff would have to be looking at it as a type of person, and certainly not an ape.
Well, and there's a story that I read in the Comanche ethnography that was recorded in 1933 that tells of a guy who was out hunting buffalo alone, and one snuck up on him when he was skinning his buffalo that he killed. It come up behind him, and he was come around the backside of the buffalo, and he sees this thing standing there. And in the story, it spoke to him. He spoke. They had a conversation, which made me think that, at least in this story, it sounds like it would have spoke the same language, Comanche.
So was it speaking orally, or was it what you hear, people talk about, the telepathic type stuff?
No, it said they were just speaking. They're speaking.
Really?
He had in the story, the man had offered him some of the meat. He was very frightened, but he's trying not to show that he was frightened. But he offered up some of the buffalo meat, and it told him, "No, I'd rather eat you."
Oh boy! Wow.
So he said that he startled his pony, kind of whipped it to get it lively, and jumped on top of it and took off. Ran away from it.
Wow. Okay. Now is this from Comanche lore?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm familiar with the tribes closer to me and their original territory, like Choctaw. They were down in Mississippi. The Cherokee more towards Tennessee and stuff. The Comanche people, where was their native range?
Kind of southern plains, basically, like western Oklahoma, western Kansas, eastern Colorado, eastern New Mexico, and most of western and southern Texas and central Texas.
Okay.
There's also stories. There's stories in the ethnography also that point to them raiding far south enough to have seen monkeys.
Yeah.
They were aware of them.
Oh, I've heard like older Comanches. I've heard those stories from older Comanches. Talk about, you know, they went raiding so far south, because like that was a yearly thing for them, for Comanches and Kiowas, was to go raiding into Mexico. And I guess one time they just decided to go exploring or something, and went south far enough that they saw monkeys.
Wow. That is something else.
Pretty
So,
big range.
okay, now Brad, you're far enough away. Your voice is cutting out
Okay.
quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, depending on how long ago that story took place, I mean, how far north did monkeys used to come?
That's a good question.
You know, that's like the big cats, like the jaguar, their original range came right up here where we're at. But now they've been pushed. And now here, just within the last few years, they've been encountering jaguar in Arizona. There was a mountain lion hunter there that his dogs cornered something in a cave, and when he called them off, when he saw what it was a jaguar, and he actually took a picture of it and sent it to Outdoor Life magazine. That was back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
So, which that's always, you know, you hear about people around here once in a while saying they saw a black panther.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one thing that can be. That has to be a jaguar, because a mountain lion does not have a black phase. The only thing that does, that's in the Americas, is the jaguar. So that's food for thought there too, you know.
Give me a second. Let me cut off this fan, because I think that's what's making it
That's
hard.
probably it, yeah.
It's not helping. No, that was good. Okay.
Yeah, my friend here, Jeffrey Strader, wants to know when I'm going to interview Bigfoot. And I didn't even have to answer, because Cashew, our moderator, she answered for me, said, Jeffrey, their schedules clash. So, man, I'll tell you what, Jeffrey, if you can set that interview up, that would be one for the books right there. Here's one. Here's Chris Kimball, says jaguar on a game cam in the Wichita Mountains of Arizona. Yeah, for sure. So realistically, I mean, the original territory, if you'll to use that word, of Comanche is pretty much kind of where you're at now, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah.
Or that's so.
We're kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as Bigfoot type activity, are you aware of any sightings of Bigfoot or such in the like Wichita Mountains down where you guys live?
I've heard stories.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a couple of stories that relate to pretty close to where my family's land is. I've heard a couple of stories where people have seen a pair that run around. But I don't. It's all hearsay. So I've never seen anything. Bigfoot wise.
Yeah. We've heard some weird stuff out there, but we've never seen one.
Yeah, you sent me an audio file of something that was making a pretty strange noise out there. Did you ever figure out what that was, or is it still in the mystery zone?
I have no idea what it was. I'm wondering if I was kind of wondering if maybe I picked up part of my podcast I was listening to. I had a little Bluetooth speaker, and I had the recorder about 100 yards away from my campsite. Or well, probably not that. Well, probably about 80 yards or so. And I don't know if it picked that up or not, but it sounded to me like it was coming from out of the creek instead of where I was. But
Now is that creek that you sent me the pictures of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty place.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
I said that to you because I didn't know what it was, and I was hoping that that maybe you'd go say, "Oh, that they'll tell me what kind of animal it was."
Yeah.
But
it was faint enough. I mean, it was. I'd definitely keep a hold of it as a point of interest. You might hear it again and hear it clearer, or whatever. And it may be something totally, normal. I hate to use that term because wouldn't a sound. I mean, I believe a Bigfoot's totally normal, but I mean, normal sounds that we normally hear. Now you had relayed, I'm trying to remember this correctly, relayed the story about someone who had something come into their house down there.
That was
I think they were actually. It was like on a covered.
It was on a back porch.
Basically.
This happened from what my mom's recollection was. This happened probably right before my mom was born, but it was her brothers that told the story of. They in the summertime they used to sleep on a back screen porch out there, and they said that they had a door that set over they just slid the door in front of it. It wasn't on the hinges.
Mm-hmm.
They said they'd slide the door in front of the doorway to keep their dogs out and little animals out.
Mm-hmm.
And they slept on cots or these little beds. And my uncle said that something had walked in there in the middle of the night, like talking like maybe 1-2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Walked up on that back porch and moved that door. He heard that door move, but he didn't move inside of his bed. And he said he heard it come inside the porch and walked around for a while. And didn't he say it sat on his bed?
So yeah, he could feel it sit on his bed, and you could hear it messing with his shoes or something.
Yeah, he had his shoes laying next to his bed, and he said that it sat on his bed, and he was too scared to move, and he heard this thing messing with his shoes, and he said that it was there for a while. I don't know, but it eventually got up and walked around a little more. This is getting right close to dawn. He said that it had left, walked out to the edge of the yard or around the corner of the house, and he heard it make a noise that sounded like laughter.
Oh, wow.
As it ran across the field back to the creek. And now where this house sat back in the day is probably
50 yards from the creek.
Yeah, it was probably about 50-75 yards from the timber before it goes into the creek bottom. And that's where he said he had finally rose up to look and see what it was. And at the time, I don't know what they had planted in the field at the time, but they said it was real tall, and they could see this thing's head and shoulders as it run back to the creek.
Wow. Here's a guy here, Jeffrey Strader, put up here. Can y'all read what's I'm putting up on the screen there?
Yeah.
It said Boy Scouts had a cabin intrusion one night. The young boys who were interviewed all stated it was a large, hairy man that walked in. Jeffrey, was that in Oklahoma or where was that? Maybe he'll throw in there. So that's
it was at a cabin.
Yeah. Let me see if he adds to that any.
Yeah, there's
Oh, he said down in Davis.
Oh,
so yeah, that's very close. Very close to me. That's right down the road.
Yeah, that's where I go through Davis when I'm on my way up to Ada.
Yeah, for sure. So how about here's something else that when your mom was up here with you last time we were talking about that I'm completely fascinated with, mainly because I just am very limited on what I know about it. It's a subject of the little people. And it seems to be a common legend amongst about every tribe that I have looked into has a Cherokee, which is what I am, partially anyway. The little people are a big part of there, and then your mom telling me about the little people in yours, as well as the Choctaw and all of that. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's it's one thing in common with that in these stories of Bigfoot is that I've noticed that there's tribes that have stories of these that go back, they go far back, probably from Florida all the way to Alaska, that have these stories of both of little people and big people. But as far as in our area, we've had family. We've had a few stories that things they've seen or heard on our land or out hunting. But why can you tell them about it?
Well, like in Comanche, they're called Nunapee, which is a little person. And I don't know how accurate this is, but I read somewhere one time that supposedly every tribal culture in the world has stories of little people.
Ancient Europe certainly does too.
Yeah. And we've had, there's been quite a few experiences out around the Wichita Mountains area and out on our land out there, on our family's land out there. And like me and David we've never seen one, but we've had some weird experiences.
Some things that made us wonder, maybe.
Yeah. And then like our mom has seen them, and a lot of our aunts and uncles have seen them.
Hey, is it possible for you guys to come closer to the middle there? I had one of our people in chat said, could you get those fellows? Well, now it's worse. It's
What got worse?
When you got closer, you're split up more, because it's the only thing I'm getting. The only thing I'm really getting is the bookshelf behind you.
But it's not the audio, is it? It's just the
video. Yeah,
oh.
The audio's not bad.
Let me go back to where I was then. Hold on.
Okay, that's all right. Hey, if that's what we can do, it's what we can do. That's actually best right there. Okay, here's we're talking about the little people in different culture. Prepper Camper here brings that little people equal fairy folk, and I think that's very accurate. In the old Europe, you had gnomes and elves and things like that, and it is fascinating that, like you said, every culture has these little people. Now, in ancient Europe, and you see this in a lot of the children's tales and stuff, the little people are often not up to any good. Sometimes they would leave a changeling, take a newborn baby from a family. This is ancient Europe. Take that baby and leave one of theirs there. That way the people would be raising this kid, and it would be ill-tempered and just, whatever, changeling, whatever. Now, in Comanche culture, what's the more common thread is what the little people do, or what are their?
I've never really heard any stories of them like taking babies or anything like that. But they tend like a lot of the stories, they tend to be kind of mischievous. They'll
play tricks.
Yeah, play tricks on you, move your stuff around so you think you're going crazy and stuff like that. And
they've like that thing that happened out there with those lights. It sounds like some of this like pranks and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they do pranks, like little gremlins or something, kind of.
Yeah, well, like for the most part, the stories that, like, if you go back to the old stories, for the most part, they didn't want to interact with anybody. In fact, in the old Comanche stories, if they ever saw any of the Comanche, they would take off. They'd run away and hide, or disappear.
Yeah.
Now,
That's kind of done. They do that, like in that story that our cousin was telling us too. They kind of did that too a little bit.
well, can you, if you want to, tell about the picture you showed me of the little arrow that was stuck in somebody's house that was.
Okay, yeah, that story happened. I looked it up because I looked up the information on that photo. It happened back in 2013. My family, which we have a very, very big family, like I said. Sometimes we'll meet and have fire pit night. You know, we'll all meet, and this is out on our property, out towards Medicine Park area.
Okay.
We'll meet out there and roast weenies and tell stories. And one night there, I wasn't out there. I'm normally out there almost every time they have a fire pit. I'm out there, but this night, me and Brad, we weren't out there. Our mom wasn't out there. But we had a bunch of our other cousins and uncles and aunts out there, and I think there's about 12 of them out there. And somebody said that they had heard, or they come out the door and they said somebody's down at the creek. There's like 4 or 5 lights down there at the creek.
Like, when you're saying lights, what do you mean, like flashlight lights or little?
Well, it took a while for it to register what it was, because initially the one that came out of the house and first saw it to tell the rest of the family thought it was somebody's, either their phones or maybe little flashlights or something, but they were seeing these lights down by the timber, and they were kind of walking along the edge or moving along the edge of the timber. So everybody gets up. Why are people doing down at our creek at this, at night? And wondering who it was, and they stood and watched, and as they watched it, they started to see these lights. They come up closer to the house. They made their way across the field close to, and the house has a yard that's surrounded by barbed wire fence, and outside that barbed wire fence is the pasture, and out past the pasture is the creek. These things walked up from these lights. They eventually started to be able to see that they were just orbs that were working their way closer to the house, and they got close enough to the house, I guess, probably halfway between the house and the timber, where they started to see these lights were illuminating the ground a little bit. They could see them moving, and they could see it just, they're bobbing around and moving. And they said that all of a sudden they just zipped and took off. They don't know where they went.
Into the air, or
they just went off, and they just went straight off and disappeared. And so that was really weird, and everybody's sitting around the campfire talking about that. And later on in the night, they hear a loud crash or a loud bang on sounded like it was on their carport. And I think a couple of them got up to look and investigate, see what that sound was. And they come around the backside of the house, and there's a little arrow, a small arrow that went into a piece of plywood that was leaned up against the back of the house. And now everybody was afraid to touch it. Nobody wanted to mess with it. And my cousin, she was out there the next day. This happened on a Friday night, and then on a Saturday morning, she was out there, and it was still there in that plywood. And she took photos of it. And it was it was just a real crude stick. That was,
you showed me a picture of that when you were up here last time.
Yeah, I should.
And just for the sake of people in chat here, this was he's not talking about a little store-bought arrow. This was like a hand whittled, for lack of a better word, a little arrow, and it was just stuck in the plywood there. So
yeah, it had a little knob back side of it. It was whittled pretty nice. It had a little kind kind of like what do they call it? A fuller? Is that what they call it? Like on a sword, you know? How on a sword they'll have to strengthen a sword. You know, you'll see like a little like valley,
that groove in the
Right.
or something.
Yeah, it seemed to have that on along the sides of it.
Okay. Let me look real quick over here and make sure I'm not missing any questions. Will Starr, who anybody doesn't know who he is, he's got a really excellent YouTube channel where he relays a lot of older historical Bigfoot sightings and stuff. And he says little people like leprechauns, and I'm sure by this time, Will, you've realized what we're talking about is within different cultures there. And yeah, I would say over in the old world, leprechauns and stuff would definitely fit into that category, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the ones over here leading people to treasure, like they say, or anything like that. Now, what I have read, and this is and you showed me the picture of the Choctaw medicine man with the little person beside him. And in the Cherokee, also the little people would sometimes abduct like a very young native child, keep them for a while and teach them how to like find medicinal plants and make medicine and things, and then return the child to the tribe. And as he got older, he would be the medicine man. And is there a similar to that in Comanche folklore as well?
Yeah, I was reading in this ethnography just right before we got on the stream. There was an account saying that the little man gave an Indian power. He told him to have his bow. He told him to have his arrow half as long as his bow. He told him not to shoot around carelessly, as he would kill something with every shot. It seems like to me, like at least what in this story here, it was it taught some lessons maybe to Indians, at least in the folklore.
So these were not, and here's a deal, and I've thought about when we think of the Sasquatch, or at least to me, I think of the hairy wild man type creature that shy, wants to be left alone, hides in the woods, tries to avoid us as best he can. Mm-hmm. It seems like the little people, as what you're talking, is very wise and secretive race of beings.
Yeah, and this story here isn't necessarily an account. I think it's like a it seems to me like a almost like an origin story or something, like folklore, but it could be. But the only thing about the ethnography, which holds almost all this information that goes back to the older people, they say to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Like whenever, I started reading the Comanche ethnography one time, and some Comanche people told me to take everything in there with a grain of salt, because a lot of the Indians back then didn't trust the anthropologists, these white people who were coming in to ask them all these questions and stuff. They didn't trust them fully, and so they would just kind of give them just kind of bullcrap stories. And
right. Now here's Chris Kimball. Chris is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. Chris is Seminole, and I believe he lives down in Florida. But he said the stories I have heard is that there were many different kinds of little people, but only one type remains. Now that's curious.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that very much is. Here's Kansas Squatch asks, have y'all had any strange experiences yourselves, either of you?
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of weird experiences out there on that land.
Yeah, some of the experiences that we've had on that property would go definitely into the Moore side of your Bigfoot and Moore.
Yeah.
Some of it you can't even really say that it's even in the cryptid category.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that some of it's pretty strange.
Yeah, some of it's probably more in the maybe spiritual category or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, that's fine.
But there's plenty of stories regarding little people around what our family's old home. There's an old home site on our property. They moved out of this house in, I think, 1970, and moved into their new house, which was just like probably 100 yards away from the old house. And the old home site, it eventually just crumbled. But back in the day when they lived at this old house, they had a lot of strange activity going on. A lot of there's many of my aunts and uncles remember this little man who used to sit on their roof at night, and they said that they saw him quite often.
Yeah. My mom said they had a water well back then, and it wasn't plumbed to the house or anything. They had to go out and draw the water up from the well and bring it in the house, and so they would have to do that at night a lot of times, and they'd go out and they'd see this little guy sitting on the roof of their house when they do that sometimes.
Yeah, and and I know there's another story my mom told about when they were all, I guess it was bedtime and everybody's trying to go to sleep, and she heard a commotion in one of the rooms, and her brothers and sisters were all gathered around the window, looking out the window, and my mom said she tried to get up there to the windows to see what they were looking at. And about that time, her mom, our grandma, came in there, told them all to go to bed and run them all off to bed. But from what her brothers and sisters told her, they were looking at a little man outside their window. This is, in the dark, sitting with their dog and petting their dog.
Wow.
I don't know if this is the same fella that was sitting on the roof, but it could have been. There's more stories that deal with that I'm sure I'm missing, and I wish I could.
My mom saw one out her bedroom window on that too.
You might want to tell that one.
She said she was laying in bed one night, and she said her sister always made her sleep closer to the window, so she was sleeping close to the window. She was a little kid, and here's something at the window, and they just had a screen stapled to the window back then, like it was summer. They had the glass taken off, and there's just a screen stapled to the window. She said she looked out there and she could see there's a little person out there, and she said that he'd like reach up and like pull out a staple and then just grin real big, and he'd pull out another staple and grin real big. And she said she just turned back over and just tried to ignore it, I guess.
Wow.
We stopped.
And she, well, eventually, I suppose maybe she eventually got to sleep, maybe, and it just never saw it anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's told me that story many times.
Here's another from Chris Kimball. He said, I have a Seminole friend who saw a chickie hut of the little people out in the Everglades, like a dollhouse.
Huh.
Now that would be something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Chris, if you want to sometime, I'd like to have you on here as a guest and talk about that. Chris has on his YouTube channel as well. He has some videos where he talks about the old Seminole stuff as well. Oh, here's that groove on a sword. Western, this is my friend Joe up there in New York, Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group, said the groove in a sword is called a blood channel. I did not know that. And here, Chris commenting on the little chickie hut, he said he went back and it had gone the second time he visited.
That's just like,
oh my gosh,
our cousin told us a story pretty similar to that. Our cousin bow hunts on Cache Creek. It's kind of around it's in southwest Oklahoma. It's a big creek. Got the water.
Okay, your audio's messing up there.
And anyway, our cousin was bow hunting out on Cache Creek, and he said one day he was just kind of out walking around, and got to this part of the creek where it was kind of real sandy and it was, almost kind of like a beach along the creek. And he saw, I think he said it was three, basically, kind of like teepees, but he said they didn't have any, there's no skins or canvases on them. There is just kind of the skeleton of them, just the lodge poles. And he said the poles were about 10 feet long or something like that, which is pretty small. Like a normal lodge pole, like for a normal teepee, is probably more like, 14 or 16 feet or something like that. And so he said he saw three of them there, and he said it kind of spooked him. And so he went back home and sat there for a little while, and then eventually he told his son about it, and they both went back out there to look at it that same day. And he said they got out there and it was all gone. And he said like the sand looked like it had been brushed over or something, like to brush away prints or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
So see, there's another connection.
Yeah.
All the way over the Everglades, a similar thing. Now, here's a question here. It says to you guys, what kind of food sources would a Sasquatch have to choose from where you live at?
Oh, quite a bit, especially out there. There's plenty of deer. There's hogs. We got elk on our land out there.
Buffalo.
Yeah, once you get like into the refuge, there's buffalo.
They would never run out of hogs.
No kidding. Those things are a plague. Yeah, but hey, I know from one of your stories, the last one that, the last Piamupits that tangled with the buffalo, it didn't work out real good for it. It ended up being splattered on the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I read that story in one of my videos, how the moon got its spots. Basically, the little Comanche girls tried to get away from the Piamupits or the Sasquatch, and they asked the baby buffalo for help, and he butted the Piamupits and knocked it all the way up to the moon. And that's when you look up, you see where it's splattered on the moon, and that's the dark spots. That's my condensed version of it, But yeah, for anyone that's not familiar with that part of the state, behind me, the picture behind me, that's a picture I took in the Kiamichi Mountains. That part of the state, the southeast where I'm at, a lot of water, green as it can be. I mean, it's just, you can't go 100 yards hardly without finding another creek. Now, out in southwest Oklahoma, which is the Wichita Mountains area where David and Brad are, it's very arid, almost desert-like. Matter of fact, what it brought to my mind when I was in that wildlife refuge down there, like if you ever see the really old Westerns where they're pulling the wagon trains through and all those, not mesas, but the sandstone buttes and stuff sticking out of the ground, it kind of reminded me of that. It's very arid, prairie, a lot of prairie dogs. I remember getting out and watching those, and it's very, very, it's opposite of southeast Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's very different, very arid, almost desert-like in a way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And there's actually another story that I was reading. This was I don't know, this would have happened probably at the turn of the century. But there's another story that took place 30 miles they say it was about 30 miles north of Cache. You know where Cache is? Cache is
yeah.
It's really close to the Wichita Mountains. In fact, it's like just on the other side.
Okay.
But not really the other side, but it's close to the Wichita Mountains, and about 30 miles north of there's a story that they told about. They were camping on a creek, and they went out to kill some beef. I guess this was they had cattle roaming back in these days, and they're going to kill some beef, and they said that they had seen or they heard a herd that sounded like it was being herded towards them. They could hear them running, and they saw these little people, I guess, jump to either side, and they were shooting arrows at it, killed it, and they said that they hollered whenever they saw this going on. The Indians, they hollered at them, and they all took off running. The little people took off running, but they said they wouldn't touch their beef because they claimed that if they would have touched their beef or ate their beef, they would have died.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking it's like they think it would poison them.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's another old story told by the Comanche, like the elders from back in the day.
Yeah, I remember reading that. It was like a brain or bull or something. I think.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's another Nunapee story from our cousin that was from in the same areas where he saw the lodge poles. He had a buddy who also bow hunted out there, and he said that he'd always see him, whenever he was walking to or from his stand, and he said that he ended up seeing him one day at a general council kind of a thing at the tribal headquarters, and he said that his buddy saw him and told him to come back here so he could talk to him, and he told him about last time he went out turkey hunting during April. I can't remember. This has been like years ago now, but he said that whenever he was kind of sitting I think he was sitting like against some timber, and he had like the sun to his back, and was just kind of looking for turkeys. And he said that he saw two little heads pop up from behind this hill, and
he said not 100 miles or 100 yards away.
Yeah,
what he said.
Yeah, and he said that it looked like two old men. Is what he said, like just like really old, and
wearing pants.
Yeah, he said like the clothes that they were wearing was almost like old like Indian like boarding school clothes or something, like old like wool looking pants and like old like government issue looking shirts and like old army boots or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but he said they were about 3 or 4 feet tall, and he said that there's two of them standing there, and they stood up, and he said he could tell they were kind of looking his way. They were trying to see him, but they couldn't see him because he had the sun to his back, and so he said they took off, and he said that was the last time that guy ever went hunting out there.
Yeah, they ran away.
Still going?
Yeah.
All right. My internet just went out.
Uh-oh.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I've got AT&T internet here, and it's less than reliable sometimes.
Yeah.
Paul, if you buy a guitar here, we can definitely help you with lessons. That's no problem. Let me find where that is. So, how much did we get knocked out there? Here's a good question here by Kansas Squatch. Do skinwalkers appear in Comanche culture?
Not really.
I've not really heard much of it like in Comanche culture. I've heard, I've heard stories of them because like there's we've got there's Comanches, and we've got family who have lived like in the Southwest, like on like the Navajo reservation out there and stuff, and they've some of our family's got stories of seeing like shape shifting actually taking place.
Wow. We talked about this just a little bit before we came on. Like among the Seminole and stuff, they have the Stigini here, which is like the shaman or medicine man that can take the form of an owl. Does that qualify as what they call a skinwalker, or is that a different phenomena?
I think that sounds like a different deal. I think skinwalkers, I think, are pretty much it's pretty much a Southwest thing. Like it's
Arizona.
Yeah. I think probably things very similar, around North America. But I think when I think skinwalker, I think like desert Southwest.
Also think evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Stigini, not necessarily evil. From there's a very famous, and I can't, Enoch Kelly Haney, Seminole artist from a Seminole area here north of me, very famous painter. and he painted a picture of a Stigini. Basically, in the picture, it's a young Seminole warrior has a flame in his hand and he's shining it at an owl. And the owl in the painting, you see the face of the medicine man in it, and he recites the legend how if you shine the light on the owl that was a Stigini, then you would see the true face of the person doing it, and then that person would owe you a favor to not give away his identity. And yeah, Chris, I think everybody likes barbecue. Absolutely. Let's see if I'm trying to catch up on the chat here. See if we got any other questions for. Here's the original Brian Gill, and this is a good friend of mine. Hey, I tell you what, Brian has that picture on his avatar of Weird Al. He actually got to meet Weird Al one time. He's like a big fan of his. They said he's really nice, but he said if they ever done a night hunt, and I'm assuming a night hunt for cryptid, like for Sasquatch. Have y'all ever gone out at night investigating?
Not really intentionally, I wouldn't say. We've spent a lot of time on that land and on that creek. Like we used to camp. Like David still camps out there pretty regularly. I go out there with him about once a year or so now because I'm married and got kids. But when we were teenagers and stuff, it was almost a weekly thing to go out there and just even if we weren't camping, just wander around at night and like walk through the creek and stuff.
We used to walk our creek every time we go down there. We walk it at night.
Yeah.
And I still do. When I go solo camp, I'll still go walk the creek at night, especially if it's like nice and cool out.
Yeah. We've had weird experiences out there doing that, like camping and stuff. Like one story is like one night it was like me. I think it was me and David and one of our cousins and one of our friends were out there camping. And I can't remember if our cousin was with us or not. But we were out there camping, and we were all kind of, if I remember right, we had like our campfire kind of in the middle of the camp, and everybody was kind of on the edges of the camp. Like everybody got up to relieve themselves, and so everybody's kind of on the edge of the camp. And where I was by the creek, I was standing because our camp was right on the edge of the creek, and I was on the edge of the creek, and it's like a big steep bank going down in the creek, and there's a spot right there where it's kind of, there's like a little trail that goes down this bank where you can get down there where cattle usually will come up through there, and they had a pretty good trail going through there. And I just remember hearing it sounded like hooves, and it was coming up that trail, but I couldn't see anything. There was nothing there, but you could hear it, and it went right through the middle of the camp, and everybody heard it, and it sounded like hooves, like heavy, like really heavy. And
I think we all ducked.
Yeah, everybody was like freaking out, thinking we're our camp's getting stampeded or something. And but it didn't sound like a bunch of hooves. It just sounded like something big walking through the camp, and it went right in the middle of the camp.
Went right over a fire.
Yeah, but nobody saw anything, and it was just
that is reminiscent of a thing that happened when Cornell, my friend Cornell, he's over in the chat, but he says he's watching Dora with his daughter on YouTube, so that's why he's not popping in here. But when he came down last year camping, something come down heavy-footed and stood beside his tent and totally freaked him out. He'd tell you if he was here. And me and my son, we were in another tent. He woke us up yelling that something was in his camp. But when we got out, we could not see it anywhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I know, and the way I ruled out that being a bear was we had food left out, and whatever it was did not touch any food. A bear would have made a beeline for that cooking grease that was in the skillet. And anybody that lives in bear country, don't do like I did. You're not supposed to leave stuff out like that, but we did. And but he didn't see it. He heard it, but we didn't see it after that. So I don't know. What do they call Bigfoot in Oklahoma, Chris? As far as what just popular, we call it Bigfoot or Sasquatch, for the biggest part. And if you're referring to the native tribes there, if you listen very long, you'll see there's not any one word for it. Every tribe has their own name for it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting about that is if every tribe, and I think I'm not just limiting that to Oklahoma, tribes all across the Americas have a name for these type of creatures, same as they have the name for the little people that are different in each one. So that is very indicative that this is not just an isolated phenomenon, because it goes back. And here's the deal: how many centuries and millennia do these legends go back?
There's cave paintings or rock paintings in there, petroglyphs.
Yeah, petroglyphs out west. And this may not have anything to do with a Sasquatch type creature, but I live about 30 miles east of here, and because where I'm at, Ada, you've been here. But there is a cave, and I wish I knew where it's at. It's on private property. But in this cave, you go down into it, and you come up, and there are some petroglyphs written or drawn in red, whatever they are, whatever kind of they use to make the ink or whatever. And it is of humanoid type figures, and and more than likely it's just figures of, people there, but who knows how old that is. And that's in a cave somewhere in the woods, within a 5-mile radius of my house. And if I knew who owned the land or whatever land it was on, it's kept secret for obvious reasons, because you get some teenagers going in there, they're going to write their own crap on the walls, and just completely ruin it. But now my friend that I mentioned, this gentleman named Lewis Stiles, that was very much a mentor to me regarding all things outdoors. He actually years ago was able to go and see that, but he didn't know how old those were. But
no telling.
Even the book I wrote, The Champagne, that's based on a Choctaw legend. It takes place in Oklahoma, but Oklahoma is not originally Choctaw territory. That legend would be from down in the Mississippi area.
Yeah.
If it's Choctaw. So how old is the legend of those creatures?
Yeah.
It just,
very,
I guess,
very old.
It must have just traveled. The stories must have traveled up to the Trail of Tears with them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Let me see. I'm going to try to catch up here and see what we got as far as. James, you are correct. AT&T stinks. It usually during the day when there's probably more traffic on the internet here on my business, it'll go out 2-3 times. Cashew, welcome to our new channel sponsor, AT&T. Oh boy.
Guitar shop now?
Do what?
Are you at your guitar shop?
The reason I've done it here the last couple of times is my picture is better here. I've got satellite internet at my house. It's a lot more reliable as far as not dropping off, but my picture is very pixelated. So, the last few times I've got lucky and haven't had anything happen here, but tonight it did. Where'd that go? There's the lady in the woods. How you doing there? Mel, I think they already answered that. They don't know of any actual dogman phenomena in the culture. Let's see. It's not wrong. Used to be fiber. Oh yeah, Will Star's rubbing it in. He's got fiber optics AT&T up there in Ohio, so he's got good up there. Down here, they haven't replaced anything. They're being discriminatory against us Okies. We should protest, David.
I don't think I've ever seen your feed drop out before, but that's
that's the first time. First time it has. There's Dogman, Lady in the Woods. Out. Yeah, Chris, that is right. There is a plethora of names for it. Well, you talk about cannibal type, the stone giants up in the Northeast. They were tribe of giants that somehow they were like something in their hair, but it was dried in it, made it really like rocks, and their arrows couldn't penetrate it. They did war with them.
And what was that?
Yeah, the stone giants. I'm just kind of something about the hair on their bodies. They would roll in the mud or something, and it would cake up and be like an armor or something. And that's paraphrasing. I could be. That's not very specific, but yeah, they used red ochre, and Chris said that too for their cave paintings. Hard to date. Yeah, and that's true, Chris. Rock art is really hard to date. I mean, that's out here. It could be anywhere from the 1800s back to 1,000 years ago. We just don't know. Yeah, Will Starr, you're very good at finding things, and I think you can find pictures on the internet of the cave drawings in that. But it'd be real. You would impress me even more than you already do if you actually located that. That would, because I would love to see that.
Is it private property?
Yeah, it is. It's private property, and I don't even know who owns it. There's Strange Land. How you doing, man? He's from way up in Newfoundland or somewhere up there. If I'm getting that right, I hope I am. But I know he's up from.
I've heard stories about as far as little people go. I've heard people suggest that maybe they live subterraneanly, like they live underground, which would explain why nobody ever sees anything.
Right. Western New York said probably don't have lore of Dogman because it was an internet invention. The Iroquois don't have stories of Dogman either. And I don't know about how the lore among Native Americans are on Dogman. I'm not sure. Now, I do know that we kind of go along a little bit with what Joe's saying. It's definitely more prevalent on the internet now. Let's say that. Back in the 90s, when the internet was still pretty new, I never saw stories about that back then amongst the cryptid stuff. But it seems like over the last just very few years, the Dogman subject has become more prevalent on the internet. I'm not gonna go and say that it was invented on the internet, but it's definitely became more prevalent on the internet lately. Let's see. We got Will Starr. I've kind of fallen behind there. Okay. Where'd it go? This is, okay. That's what are our guest thoughts on the Joshua LaFleur Cannibal Bigfoot account?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with it.
Well, it's honestly, it's not real. That's where the troops or whatever fought a tribe of cannibal Bigfoots there. That story was invented back in the mid to late 90s as part of just a scary story or so. I know Choctaw elders that grew up down there. You tell that to them, they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about? There's never nothing like that ever happened." But it's one of those stories that is prevalent on the internet, that and LaFleur was, pretty common name and such like that. There are people around here that are Choctaw with the last name LaFleur. Yeah. But there was not a tribe of cannibal Bigfoots that was raiding outlying native villages and stealing their children and eating them and piling the bones up. And then the cavalry came and had a bloody battle with them. And LaFleur had his head pulled off by one and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, it's a creepypasta, basically.
That reminds me of that story about when Patterson and Gimlin filmed Patty, and they say there's a big massacre that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody I guess made it up and
Yeah.
it grew legs.
Yeah, and man, you can really do it. And Yankee, here you go about stone giants. Joe from Western New York said the stone giants were called Otne Yar, head, whatever, Dave. They were said to have skin so hard arrows had a hard time penetrating it. And I've read somewhere, again, this is internet, that they would like roll in the mud or something to cake it up. And that part may be just made up,
Were they people, or were they some kind of like a Bigfoot thing?
Well, in the retelling of it today, they were type of Bigfoot, but they're in the lore, I believe they're just giants that, like Joe's saying, that their skin, hair, or whatever was so hard that arrows had a hard time penetrating.
That other story in that old account of the ethnography book that said something similar to that about Muppets, about Pia Muppets said that they couldn't penetrate their skin or something like that, to that effect.
Yeah. That makes more sense because, like hogs, like all the wild hogs and stuff, they roll in the mud all the time. They're covered in dirt and mud.
Yeah.
It don't slow down an arrow. They're hard to get through, but it's not because
right. And as far as are the stone giants a Bigfoot type creature or this or that?
Yeah.
I think sometimes some of the old native lore is retold within the popular context today to make it seem like a Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And I think you were in the chat last week when Yankee was pointing out some of the Lenape lore that nowadays they're calling it a Bigfoot, when back then it really wasn't.
Oh.
Like the protector of the forest. Nowadays I forget what I wish he was in chat. He could come on and tell us, but nowadays they'll say that protector of the forest is a Bigfoot, but he said it doesn't say that. It said it was a 9-foot man, and he was so big that he would have to have 2 bear pelts to make his coat out of. So, a Bigfoot wouldn't need a bear pelt because he's got a built-in pelt.
Yeah.
So, and that's what he said. He said, yeah, people are interpreting it that way, but that was just a big man that was probably more spiritual than, or as much as being physical. So, yeah. Willstar said he has access to some special topography maps that would probably lead me to the cave with some research. And man, I tell you, Will, he does some amazing things with that. He'll tell one of those old stories from the 1800s or whatever, and using Google Earth and stuff, he'll zoom in right on the location it took place.
Yeah. I've been on his channel for a while. Yeah,
he's done a great job there. Hey, we got this guy here, man. Bigfoot Okanagan. Good to see you, man. Good to see you back in good health. That's my buddy up there in British Columbia.
Oh.
And so let's see here. Swanton, I'm missing something here. Okay, I'm not up there now. So, but I try to get any questions people have. Hey guys, we've been on just over an hour now. If anybody has any questions for David or Brad, just type them in there and we'll get it over to them. Hey, another thing I was going to bring up, and I wrote it down, but
oh, did we lose it? AT&T. They did it again. Well, I wish I could see the chat, but I can't. Harry's coming back.
Is it you or him?
Nuts. He's on. Oh.
Okay, can you see me?
Yeah, you're not in the woods anymore.
No, I am I'm here, but I've switched over to my cell phone because my stupid internet's acting up again.
We're gonna have to have a talk with
My cell phone is Plan B.
I recommend 360 communications if you can get them.
Well, next time I'm just going to do it at my house, and if I'm pixelated, then that's just going to have to do, because this is ridiculous. Yeah, clone of Dave. Yeah, good old AT&T. I'll use this time here to badmouth AT&T. You pay your bill on it like I do, they should have decent internet instead of this crap. I've had to have AT&T come to my store about 4 or 5 times in the last year to fix this stuff, and they never get it right.
Well, that's cable companies for you.
Yeah.
And rarely can ever you get them there on time.
Well, there I am.
He's back again.
Let me kill this real quick. Oh, I got to shut it down on my phone. There I went. Well, at least I have the phone I can go to. Okay. All right. Let's see if I missed any questions here. Okay. Stone giants may or may not be the equivalent of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, but Walter, my Seneca friend, just called them hairy wild giants. This is stone giants, but they were a people or tribe of people. And, and I am definitely in the camp that kind of leans toward a Sasquatch being a lot closer related to us than they would be a simple monkey. Because I think if they were just a monkey, we'd have one in the zoo or have captured one or something.
They have to have some pretty good wits about them. They have to be really smart.
Oh yeah,
to keep out of sight.
Yeah. Yep. Dave was zapped by AT&T. I sure was. Let me get up where I'm at here. This thing, Bigfoot Okanagan. Gosh, they did it again. Little, hey man, people are blaming the little people. Okay, back to what I said before internet crapped out. Mount Scott area has the highest concentration of UFO sightings in the state. Am I correct on that?
I wouldn't doubt it. I've heard about them.
We've seen them. We've seen one out there one night.
Really?
We've seen
something. We saw something. I don't know.
Now we've seen two things. Well, one time was me and him, me and Brad and our cousin. We were out putting up a tent. We were going to camp in the yard one night out there, and we all saw this big old green light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just popped up in the sky just out of nowhere, like we were kind of like I was kind of facing towards Mount Scott, and it kind of popped up like I'm looking towards Mount Scott. It just kind of popped up on the left side of Mount Scott, and just appeared there, and then zoomed across the sky real fast. And like the best way I can think to describe it is it looked like just like a big green traffic light in the sky almost.
Wow. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't remember who told me that, but somebody's telling me that area down there has the most. It sure does. Mount Scott sure does look like it'd be a good place to go and set up a telescope.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. If you can get past the light pollution from Lawton, which is pretty close.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell you where I live, David. There's not any light pollution. I'm 30 miles outside of town. The closest town to me would be Allen, and it's maybe 1,000 people or whatever. And I set my telescope out in my yard, and I can see stuff great. And so far, no UFOs though that I've seen.
There was another night out there though. Whenever there was a bunch of us, the family out there again, and we watched this. I don't know why. I'd almost describe it like those Tic Tacs that people have been seeing.
Oh, yeah.
We saw one go over. I'm going to estimate it was probably maybe like 800 feet off the ground or so. It wasn't very high. But if you know, okay, so you know where Lawton is. I don't know if you know where, Duncan and Marlowe. It was headed just that direction. And I never thought to try to take a photo of it, but my cousin did. She pulled out her phone and she started trying to take a photo of it. But by that time, it was just a little speck. But that was kind of strange. And of course, you know, I've been around airplanes all my life, and I know what they look like when they fly over, and I know, you know, I can kind of tell the altitudes and stuff if they're, you know, below 5,000 feet. I can guess.
Well,
it wasn't an airplane, and it wasn't. I don't know what it was.
Well, you fly, don't you?
I haven't in a long time, but I got my pilot's license years ago.
Oh, man, you know, everybody's got to have a phobia. Mine is heights, and I've never been in an airplane.
I'm scared of heights too, but it's different being in an airplane for some reason.
You know, I've heard that. But and I scuba dive. I'm a certified rescue diver, and I've been at Lake 10 Killer, 100 foot underwater at night, pitch black, and I'm totally comfortable.
Oh gosh!
Now I can get up on top of a tall ladder, and I'm just like froze.
Yeah,
you know, depth and stuff. Everybody, you know, you hear these, and I'm sure you've heard them too. That divers won't go down in that lake because they got real deep down by the dam, and there were catfish the size of a Volkswagen. Have you ever heard that stuff?
Nuh-uh.
Like that? Oh yeah, they say that stuff. Let me tell you something. You go down that deep in those lakes, there ain't nothing down there. The big catfish, they're up at about 20 feet of water and less generally, because that's where the bait is. That's where the food sources are. Now in the wintertime, I was diving at 10 Killer, and I was down about 60 or 70 foot off the edge of this cliff. And there was a flathead, it was probably 20, 25 pounds in a shelf, just kind of laying up in there. But, you know, cold weather, they're probably deeper there. But when I've been down like really, really deep in one of these lakes, you don't really, I've never really seen anything down there.
That's
yeah. Spiders. Joe said, I'm an arachnophobe. Hate them. Joe, I am such a practical person when it comes to wildlife. I respect life. I like to say I don't kill anything unless I'm going to eat it or if it's a direct threat to me. Spiders were a challenge because I am an arachnophobe, and they were a challenge. The way I got over it, and it worked for me, is I went down to the pet shop that a friend of mine owned, and I got one of the big tarantulas out. It was a Mexican red-kneed tarantula, and I let that thing just crawl up my arm, up around my neck and stuff. It was everything I could do not to slap it on the floor and step on it. But I got past it. I've been bitten by brown recluse twice, and I don't like them, but they are a direct threat, and I do step on them. I did not have a horrible reaction from it, but I did have that second one. I ran fever and had a big swollen place on my arm, but it didn't rot out and stuff.
That's
but
the
fiddleback, the brown recluse, the fiddleback.
And I'll step on a black widow.
Black widow, totally different thing, man. Those things flat kill you, I think. Yeah. They got a very powerful neurotoxin. But non-venomous spiders, I will not kill them now. I'm not going to kid you, man. It was a challenge to get past that. Snakes don't bother me a bit. Here's one here. James Pescetti. My son was walking home through the woods one night near home and encountered a humanoid transparent thing about 6 feet tall, and he said his arm and neck hair stood up. Then he locked eyes with what? It. There we go. It. Yeah, and and I just this last week received a report of something like that. Somebody emailed me with that.
What do you think?
I have no idea. But again, people report seeing that. The person that sent me that is sincere. You know what they are? I couldn't even guess. But it, I don't know. is something paranormal or whatever. That's something, again, when you go into the paranormal, I don't discredit that. I very much believe in it, but being for what it is, how do we measure the paranormal? There's the thing. Somebody sees a ghost, spirit, whatever. How can we measure that? We really can't.
Yeah.
Now, a Sasquatch, flesh and blood being, cryptid, yeah, that's in this, hope I'm using the right words, plane of existence or whatever. We can see that. We can touch it if we got close enough. We can measure that. Ghosts, transparent being, I don't know. I'm not going to discredit it. I'm going to plead my ignorance on the subject. I am not a person that's afraid to say I don't know when I don't know, and that is something I don't know. But I want to hear about it. If you got reports on other cryptids or things like that, that's why I call this channel Bigfoot and More. I want to hear about it. Okay, let's see. We got
We've got one other pretty weird camping story.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, probably more than one, but like one that comes to mind is one night me and David camping. We were camping by ourselves out there one night, and we're camping we're in a different. There's like one or two spots on the creek that we normally camp in that are like our usual camping spots. And this night we camped in a spot on the creek just for something different. And we were both in the tent, and David was asleep, and I was still laying there trying to go to sleep. And then walking through, you could hear something in the creek, and it was just a faint sound at first, and it started getting closer and closer, and it sounded like an old Indian woman singing like a powwow song, kind of walking through the creek, and middle of the night, like probably 2 or 3 in the morning or something, and you can just hear it getting a little closer. And at first I was like, I thought I was just hearing things or something, and then it just kept getting. And I woke David up, and then he could hear it too. And so we knew we were hearing something. And so we got out of the tent and walked out of the creek and out into the pasture just to get away from it, just so we weren't so close to it. And we just stood out there for several minutes and just listened to it walk through the creek singing this song. Like it's like kind of a mournful sounding song.
It sounded sad. It was weird. Yeah. It was really, really, really weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it seems like to me, like if I remember right, that the place in the creek where when I heard it, when I decided to get up and leave was when it sounded just coming around the corner of around the bend of this creek. Mm-hmm. And man, we went out there and stood in that field for probably 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Before we go back to the tent.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was strange.
Wow. Yeah, I got to throw this up because Joe, Western New York, says that when I run into a spider web in the woods, to see me, you'd think I was suddenly a kung fu master. That I'm sure you got them down there as well, but around here we got those big orb web spiders that come out at night. And I've been hiking at night and walked through them, and all of a sudden you got a face full of spiders. I mean, they're totally harmless, but yeah, they would make you polish up your kung fu pretty good.
Yeah, make you look great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're completely harmless, but yeah, Chris said those transparent things, he calls them cloaked predators. Well, we've been on here about an hour and a half, so we'll try to wrap this up. Let me run through here. If anybody's got any last minute questions, now's the time. Lady in the Woods, she's from not too far from here. They're from down the Wichita Mountains, which is southwest Oklahoma. Not too far from Lawton, are you?
No.
In that general area. So, yeah, and I've lived in Oklahoma my entire life, and I'd never been to the Wichita Mountains until last year. I had just always gone south and east into the Wichita Mountains, and when we were down there, me and my wife went, and I mean, I'm like, why have I not been here before? This is beautiful. It's a different kind of beauty than southeast Oklahoma, but it really is. It's something to see.
We go to southeast Oklahoma because it's pretty, and it feels like a different world from here almost, because it's everything's so green in southeast Oklahoma. Yeah. Trees are tall, and it's pretty.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize I've had people from out of state ask me on here even about Oklahoma. It's like, well, what's Oklahoma? It's like, well, it's very, very diverse state. You get in Southeast, it's basically eastern woodlands.
Yeah.
And the top of mountains you find it's like the Appalachian top mountains and stuff. You get central Oklahoma, it just gradually gets the pines and hardwoods of the east gradually turn into more oak and scrub oak and stuff like that as you go. And then, we've even got sand dunes up in the northwest part of the state, the Little Sahara, they call it. People go up there, and we've got salt plains in the northwest part of Oklahoma, where people go digging for salt crystals and stuff. And then we got, down there in the Wichita Mountains, which is kind of reminiscent of New Mexico or something to me. It's a beautiful state with a lot of diversity. I can say that, and I feel fortunate to be here.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you got anything else you want to throw in there before we call it a night?
No,
I don't think so.
Well, man, David, and I'm sorry.
I said I enjoyed it. It's been fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I've kind of gotten acquainted with David and his mom. They come up here to Ada once in a while, and they always stop in the store, and we have a visit. I was kind of hoping you'd get your mom on here. Tell her I missed her. You said she's kind of shy, but
I tried.
Well, maybe she'll watch it. But tell her I said hi if she don't.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, it's nice to meet you, Brad. And if you're ever in this part of the country with David, stop in and say hey, and we'll visit a while.
That's where I go. I go to the doctor up there. That's why I'm always coming in there. So next time for an appointment, I'll come by.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I say, man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And everybody in the chat, thanks for stopping by and taking part. We at one time we had up to just right at 50 people in chat at one time. So that's pretty good. And again, thanks everybody for stopping by. And I'm not sure who my guest next week will be. I'm trying to get the lady that has opened up the Bigfoot Museum in Tallahena. I've been talking to her, and I'm going to go to her Bigfoot Museum here in the next few weeks. She invited me to come down and do a book signing of my books there. So I've been looking for an excuse to go look at it, and that's a good excuse. So I'm going to do that. But anyway, if things work out and is free for it, I'll try to get her on next week. If not, we'll see what we can come up with. But anyway, guys.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Thanks for coming by. Thanks everybody in chat. See you guys later. Stay safe.